Hey guys, this is Austin. Is this the ultimate Game Boy? In 1989, Nintendo released the original Game Boy, making this the 25th anniversary. While everyone games on their smartphones today, it's easy to forget just how awesome it was to be able to play games on the go back in 1989. I'll never forget the countless hours I spent playing Pokemon and sneaking my Game Boy into school. The Game Boy really was something special. So while Nintendo made their last Game Boy in 2005, I wanted to see how close I could get to making my own ultimate Game Boy. So this is about as close as it gets to a modern day Game Boy. This is the Nintendo 2DS in transparent crystal blue. So when I was a kid, Nintendo used to make a lot of transparent Game Boys. So there was the Game Boy Pocket, the Game Boy Advance, and they were really cool because they showed off a lot of the cool internals of the Game Boys. Well, this 2DS is kind of a throwback to that, and in fact, it came out the same day as the new Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire remakes, which is why there's a red and blue one of these. So inside the box, you get a bunch of paperwork and the operations manual. All right, this actually seems a bit much. I'm sorry, how many pages is this? 77 pages. So if you need to spend 77 pages on talking about your 2DS, good luck. Yes, this is the same charger from the DSi, 3DS, 3DS XL, and the 2DS. Now we get to the fun parts. There we go, that totally didn't take 3 takes to do. So this is the 2DS. So first of all, that blue looks awesome. Wow. You can see all the SD card slot, you can see the battery. Wow, that's actually really cool. Got the stylus, which, can I just mention that one of the things I like about the 2DS more than the 3DS is that the stylus is in a normal spot right here, and it's not some extendable thing on the top, which is complete garbage. So actually it comes with an SD card as well. Let's see what we had in here. A 4GB SD card. That's actually not bad. I think the 3DS has a 2GB. So one of the things I've always liked about the 2DS is that it actually feels more comfortable in the hand than the 3DS. So even though it's the cheaper model, it's the one for kids where it doesn't have the screens that, fold in and get broken, but the grip is actually a lot more comfortable. If you have normal adult-sized hands, it feels a little bit big, definitely bigger than like an Xbox controller or something, but it has that right kind of heft and that kind of feel to it, where all my fingers, because I have a lot of them. One major difference between this and the 3DS is the flat design. So while yes, it will kind of fit in your pocket, you really don't want to be walking around with this thing in your pants all day. Even though this is the 2DS, it still plays 3DS games. So it's only really lacking the 3D capability, which to be totally honest, really isn't a major problem. So the 3D screen on the 3DS really was never that great to begin with, and most of the games that use 3D really didn't do it all that well, so they all work just fine here on the 2DS. Games like Smash are a perfect example of why it still makes sense to have a handheld console. There's really no substitute for having decent physical controls, and while yeah, the circle pad on the 2DS is a little bit mushy, it's still miles ahead of anything you'd be able to get on a touchscreen. On top of that, the gameplay is awesome. This feels just like Brawler Melee with a smooth 60 frames per second and surprisingly decent graphics considering that this is it's a 2DS. And with games like Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, which originally launched on the Game Boy Advance, it's easy to forget just how far we've come since the days of the Game Boy. So back in the day, we didn't have any kind of backlit screens, so we were always walking around trying to find a little bit of light to be able to play the games. And these things tore through batteries. I remember having to go get another pack of AA batteries like once a month for this thing. And while it is weird to still be using physical games in 2014, it's nice to have the option to share it with a friend or go trade it in at GameStop. And you do have a digital download option. So it's not really the best, so it definitely doesn't match up with something like the App Store or the Google Play Store, but it is an option if you want to go download only. You can also play DS games on the 2DS. So there are 2 different ways of doing this. First of all, by default, it will just play with them being slightly upscaled and everything works just fine. However, everything's just a little bit blurry. So you can also start the game by holding start and select at the same time, and that will run them in a slightly smaller window. However, it will be pixel for pixel exactly like playing on a normal DS. And of course, it's not the ultimate Game Boy until it can play actual Game Boy games. Inside the eShop, you'll find quite a few retro games, including a lot for the NES, as well as some for the Game Boy and even the Game Gear. Of course, the 2DS has no problem playing a Game Boy Color game, and while a lot of these you can play with emulators, there's definitely something to be said about having the physical controls. And plus, that music just never gets old. For $100, the 2DS is pretty impressive. Not only does it look the part, but it will play original Game Boy games as well as a lot of the newer stuff even better than the 3DS. So what do you guys think? Is the 2DS worth it? Definitely be sure to let me know in the comments below. As for me, I think I'll stick with the real thing. So let's take a look at what... Game Boys!